The views and opinions expressed on all radio shows broadcast on Tom's Radio Toronto are entirely those of the hosts, guests, and callers who are entirely responsible for all show content and do not in any way reflect the opinions of Tom's Radio Toronto or its staff. These broadcasts are presented and made public as entertainment and general information only, in the hope that they will be entertaining and informative to listeners. They are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or mitigate in any way any disease or condition, or to promote any specific lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practice, nor is the information presented necessarily accurate or verifiable.
Radio Toronto, my name is Josie Sla. It's Wednesday and the weather is good, but the roads are crazy. You know, in Canada we are using highway, but sometimes highway is also crazy. And this is why we delayed to start our program today, because my friend here, my brother, amechelewa kwenye foleni. Wanasema huku kuna foleni mbaya sana, hasa kwenye highway. Unaweza ukatumia zaidi ya saa moja. Kwa hiyo ndugu zangu wa nyumbani wa Tanzania mnaofikiria maendeleo yanakuja na mambo yake mengi tu.
Dar es Salaam pia ni foleni zipo. Leo kama foleni Dar es Salaam.
Unajua uzuri wa Dar es Salaam barabara ni haziko wide kama huku. Lakini huku tuna barabara pana, lakini bado foleni ni kubwa. Kwa hiyo nafikiri ni tatizo la miji kukua. Maana naona Toronto inakuwa sana. Magari ni mengi. Nikitazama hapa dirishani huwa nasema, magari yanaenda wapi kila siku?
Mimi na miss wakati wa COVID ule essential business peke yake ndio tunasafiri.
Wakati wa COVID wakati wa close down, completely closed down. Ulikuwa unaweza kusafiri vizuri. Anyway, kipindi chetu hichi ni African Talks na leo bado kaka yetu Bori anaendelea kujiuliza swali. Where is the black man in the history of humanity? Na nilitamani sana niilete ile ramani ya kwanza kabisa ya dunia ambayo inaonyesha namna gani Afrika ni kubwa. Lakini bahati mbaya tutaileta baada ya break. Sasa Bori, tuambie, najua leo tunaendelea. Kwanza tuambie, wakumbushe watazamaji jina lako ni nani, kwa sababu nimepata comments kwamba huyu mtu ni nani.
Mimi jina langu ni Bori Buyuni Jahazi, Mtanzania. Bori ni jina la Kidigo, watu wa Tanga, na
sio Bagamoyo.
Bagamoyo ndo tulipotoka. Lakini Bori ni jina la Kidigo, na Jahazi ni jina letu la familia. Tupo bahati nzuri au mbaya vyovyote ilivyo, lakini familia yangu imetambaa, ipo Tanzania, ipo Kenya, Uganda, Kongo huko. Tupo wengi.
Okay, kwa hiyo mko mpaka Kongo?
Babu zetu walitembea huko.
Lakini ndio maana tunasema Waafrika wote ni ndugu.
Yes, ndio.
Unajua, kwanza kabla tujiendelee na kipindi chetu, nilikuwa namuona Molema, huyu kijana wa South Africa, huyu wa upinzani. Anapambana sana sasa hivi Afrika tuwe na lugha moja. Sasa wewe unamuungaje mkono? Unaonaje agenda zako? Umeshazifuatilia?
Nimezifuatilia na nampenda sana Malema. Mimi nakubaliana sana vitu vingi ambavyo Malema anafanya. Sema Malema style yake sio style ambayo inaweza kufanikiwa, kwa sababu Malema ni mbabe. Anatumia nguvu, anafoka sana, na ile style ya kutumia nguvu na kufoka sana mara nyingi haipati wafuasi wengi. Anaonekana kama ni mropokaji, na kwa utamaduni wetu wa Afrika na umri wake na jinsi anavyozungumza na hawa viongozi, anaonekana kama vile pia ni mtovu wa nidhamu. Kwa hiyo hilo ndio tatizo ambalo mimi naliona.
Kwa hiyo kama ungepewa na fursa ya kumshauri, ungemwambia azungumze, abadilishe
azungumze kwa busara zaidi,
kuzungumza,
atumie busara zaidi kuzungumza kuliko
mara nyingi anaongea point, lakini kweli kwa ile style anayotumia ya kuzungumza, hata mimi huwa najaribu kushindwa kumsikiliza.
Kwa sababu ni mkali sana na anaeleweka, anazungumza kwa machungu, lakini staili yake sio staili ya kubadilisha mfumo. Ile staili yake pengine ni staili ya kusisimua watu.
Sawa sawa. Okay, tuendelee na mambo yetu. Nilimuuliza mama swali. Mama alinijibu kweli, maana najua mimi sina namba ya mama. Mama anajua utasikiliza hichi kipindi ama unasikiliza na kutufuatilia. Mama Bori Jahazi. Nilikuuliza swali, je, nilipata majibu?
Hujapata majibu kwa sababu sikumuuliza, asijazungumza naye kuhusu kipindi. Tulizungumza vitu vingine lakini sio hichi kipindi. Nitamuuliza tena. Nitamwambia unauliza swali ulitoa jibu. Utamsikia nikimpelekea ataliona.
Tanzania, mnajua mnaweza mkajiunga na sisi kupitia tomsradio.com kwenye YouTube ambao tunakuwa live, kwenye Facebook page, lakini pia mnaweza mkatupigia simu Skype Toms Radio kama mna wazo lolote. Na wale wote ambao popote mlipo duniani ambao mnatusikiliza, Bori kipindi hiki kwa hizi siku chache amekuwa akiongea Kiswahili, na nafikiri bado anataka kusisitiza jambo kwa wale wanaosikia lugha za Kiswahili. Hebu tuendelee.
Leo mimi nadhani pengine nizungumze hii ni Kiingereza kwa sababu this is the help that I think we need from humanity. We black people are stuck with lack of information, a big gaps of history, of our history, and there's a lot of things that are confusing to us. So if there are out there that knows, maybe they can help us, because it's a series of questions, and I'm trying to find out, we as black people and what we have gone through in our life from previous, and obviously we know the history of Africa from slavery, right? What was black person before slavery is a bit hazy. There is some things that we know, but there's a lot of gap that are missing. So where do we begin in tracing down us as human? We know that race as per se, the word racism and classifying human based on their race, it was started in 18th century, where Britain was going across the world and dominate the rest of humanity as whether colony or slaves or something. But the history of the classifying humanity based on their race, it was on 18th century.
So you mean that before that we were not classified?
It was not classified.
There was no human classifications.
Yeah, human was just as human, and we also know.
So what according to your research and what you have read, what caused that classification?
British. There's some theorists somehow. Some British, I forgot his name. Those people are not important to me, to be honest with you. What is important, really, I want to know is what we do, right, to remove ourselves from this narrative and change us as humanity, as humans.
How can we change the race when the whole world now is categorized according to the race?
Yes, what people categorize you is really none of your business.
What do you mean by that?
It means that the only thing that can categorize you as an individual, right, is you, how you perceive yourself as a human, right? What anybody else think about you is their thought about you. And their thought about you are derived based on their perception that is also derived based on their upbringing, culture, environment, schooling, and a lot of things that dictate them to categorize you at a certain place.
And
I would think.
this is why I'm arguing that point, that even my perceptions also is referred to my culture,
Yes.
my who brought me up, because I grew up going to British schools. I grew up going to German schools. When I'm saying British schools, that means we had these British theories. We had the British syllabuses.
I understand all of that,
Yeah.
but so far, that narrative that was imposed to us is not accurate narrative, and we all know that is not accurate narrative. So it is up to us to agree that a narrative and roll with it, or change that narrative and rise to where we're supposed to be.
If you are talking about changing the narrative, if you are talking about changes, don't you think that the changes we are going to do, or the changes we are going to implement, is going to make us isolated? Because now we are talking about globalization. Globalization is to bring the whole world together. And this is the reason why we have, whatever we do, the policies, the theories, they have to communicate throughout the world.
I'm not against the globalization. They can do a globalization as much as they want, right? What I'm saying is, Africa, we are not ready for globalization. So for us to be able to be in globalization, we need to be ready for globalization, because the way globalization is been set is making Africa a place for raw material, right? And for us to change that, it requires us to start using those raw materials among Africa and try to develop Africa. But that's a different topic. We'll come back to that day. What I want to discuss on where is the black man in the history of humanity. Many people might think that is somewhat irrelevant, but in my opinion, I think is at the core of why a black man is suffering today, because we have been sold the stories and narrative that are not accurate. So
when you say that African continent has been sold stories which are not accurate, what do you expect the African people can get the accurate stories? Because those stories were written. Because by the remember when they came and colonized us, they disabled us in everything, in our own education and own culture, our own activities. They wanted us to do what they're telling us.
There is a say, I'm not really sure if it was Mandela or someone who was prison during in a Nazi concentration camp, or someone, I cannot remember the person, but the wisdom of it is the person realized that it doesn't matter what they take away from him on the freedom and the activities and locking them on the time. One thing that could never be able to take away from him is what he thought about himself. They were not able to force him to think what he did not want to think about himself. So
of course, I know the system. Okay. The system has demoralized us on that. I understand.
So for us to come out of that, I think we really need to know where we are from and why was the history deleted, and what our ancestors had that actually made them to destroy our history. What did our ancestors did that made them removing portions of history what happened during those time when they are removing the atrocities of this, they are removing the history. What did they do different, right? So I think we really, as human, specifically black people, we really need to figure out where we from. So for example,
when you're talking about we need to figure out where we are from, I understand. This can be personally or institutionally, because even as a person, if you want to succeed, you have to first to understand your background. Who are you? You have to understand who are you and what made you to be who you are, and where do you want to be. Those are the very potential questions for any successful person.
And why are you this way today?
Exactly.
Right?
So now, when you're talking to African people, do you want them to ask this question personally, or you want the government first to address these questions?
Well, which government, right? Because we are already all subdivided, right? I think it's just us as individual, right? We have to, because this situation can only be changed by changing our mindset. And our mindset is not going to be changed if we start our life history. What we know about us came from slavery to independence today. What happened before slavery, what made us slaves, that is what's so important. So we have to start somewhere, because to me, there is some questions that coming to me that I really need to ask to understand my place as human, a black person on this earth, and I completely refused the narrative and the history that they taught me, because it does not add up. And I'll say why it does not add up. What are the questions that I have that does not add up? For example, I understand about slavery and all type of things, right? And I understand maybe black people were slaves before, right? From the time of Moses, because Moses he was a child of Israel and was told to lead Israel to a thing, but at the same time he grew up in a Pharaoh's house as a kid, and nobody knew if he was a kid of Pharaoh or not, which to me suggests that Moses was black,
and
as Wes was saying, and Pharaoh was black, right? And when you start talking about that,
maybe they didn't have color too,
when you start talking about that, and you start looking now on the things, you can Google that if you want to, and YouTube is there.
What I'm saying is that maybe that time there was no race, the way you say. There was no black, there was no white, there was no gray, there was no green.
No, the kid that is born in a black family will be black, and the kid that is born in a different race will be different race. Or maybe at that time everybody was black. Who knew, right? Whatever the case it is, right? I don't know what happened there, but the fact that Moses was black, as we are told, Muslim, by Muhammad, right?
In Muslim, you are taught that Moses was
black man, right?
Okay.
He grew up with Pharaoh.
Because in the Bible,
it doesn't say.
Yeah, we don't. It doesn't
say. There's so many
about race.
Yes. Another thing that puzzling me is who was in Jerusalem during the time of Jesus, before Suez Canal, right? What happened in the Suez Canal? Why did they choose that place to be the place for Suez Canal? Why did they separate only Israel for that Suez Canal. There was other easier route that they could use, I think. That was better route than that part. Those are the questions that I'm asking myself. For us black people to be able to trace down our history, we have to start, I think,
from the Garden of Eden.
No, we can.
No, because that's where the first human being. No, I mean it's not. I mean when God created Adam and Eve, He put them in the Garden of Eden.
Well, Quran answer that. He said, I created Adam from altered black mud.
Okay.
That's what it says, right?
It says black mud. That
Altered black mud.
That's
a specific word.
Adam was black too.
You can translate that however you want to translate it, but it says Adam was created from altered black mud. Everywhere else, it was written as clay. I don't know what's the color of the clay, but the way it was written in Quran, it was altered black mud.
I want to read the Quran because it makes sense that when you talk about Moses and when you ask a question who was in Jerusalem, I'm trying to connect all these dots because they always say when you talk about visual image, when you are defining diagrams, they say these methods whereby you have to connect the patterns.
It needs to make sense. Like there are certain things that make absolutely no sense, right?
You're trying to tell us that we have to define whatever we are defining by connecting different patterns.
Yeah, yes, different pattern. And I might have certain patterns, and someone else might have certain patterns. But we need to connect
all those patterns,
all the patterns.
Oh, the patterns the patterns I know,
and
put them down together.
Actually find us, because if we happen to find out that Moses was actually really black, if we come up to find out that most of those people who were in Jerusalem that was run away from it after they killed Jesus, moved to Africa instead of Europe because Israel was Africa, right? They moved south instead of where they were, right? When we can connect that and have a proof of that, then we black people, or maybe some of black people, maybe not all black people are Jews, right? Because if we claim that Pharaoh was also black and he was enslaving Jews and Jews were only black, maybe there's a chance that Jews are specifically group of black people, however way it is, but what says that what we are told, that we are not as intelligent, we are not as smart, we are not as progressive, we are not as civilized. They're all lies, right?
I agree with you.
What was until now they have not figured out how was pyramids built, right? In a place like Egypt. So if those people who actually built those pyramids were black, right? It completely changed the narrative of what happened.
And that technology
has never been
adapted
thing, right? It's never been adapted, and they've never been able to use. And the funny thing,
they don't know. I think they've done I've been reading. I have a friend who is a Jewish. He's trying to connect all these patterns the way you're saying to get the source of all these details we are talking about.
Where did they source? So for example, I came across an information that pyramids, right? And I came across that from out of my curiosity for one reason, right? I understand pyramids in Egypt, they say they were created to bury the kings, right? As mummies, right? That's what they say. But when you go to Latin America, a place like Mexico, right? They have pyramids as well, right? And they say for them, the story they gave them was to sacrifice people, right? It is exactly the same thing, right? So how did this pyramid become a sacrifice for people in Latin America, but in Egypt became a place to bury people? In another place is for another story. So I had to try to find out what is the reason for pyramid. And here is what I found out. Apparently, pyramids was a lighting technology, how to light cities. So now my fantasy is now my head going a little further, right? Was it like, how do you brighten the city using stone? Obviously, it's not possible, right?
Because
So
because those those stones are shining stones. They
Yes, but-
are not normal. The way they are making those stones, I managed to be in Egypt some time back. The stones are shining. So maybe let's go.
was it diamonds?
Let us go for a short break, and after the break, I think what you're talking is very, very important, that we need to connect the dots. So what we are going to do, we are going to bring that map, the first map of the world, and then we are going to start tracing the journey from how everything started and how Jerusalem started, how Romans started. I think when we do this with our audiences, that's when they are going to understand why you want us to think where is the history of black people.
Men, yes.
Okay, DJ Owen, thank you. Take us for a short break. This is Tom's Radio. We'll be back. Stay tuned.